Welcome to Rolling Hills, a discussion panel for Topicality. My name is Boyce.
And I'm Micah.
And today we are here with two of our student correspondents.
I'm Hailey Sampson.
I'm Bria.
And today we have a very special LPGA episode. So we're going to be talking all about athletes who have been using their platform for social change, social justice, things like that. And so as you guys know, professional sports has been around for a while, but it's a relatively new concept, pretty much emerging in the fashion that we know it as, for how it's recorded, how it's played in the late 1870s or early 1870s. But politics, for as long as it has, sports for as long as it has been created, has really been used as a tool for political activism and political things like that. So
Absolutely.
One of the biggest questions that emerges when you think about athletes and sports is, should athletes speak about politics? And that's going to be the main headline that you see everywhere. So I just want to start off with, should athletes talk about politics?
I think they should. I feel like when fans or like outside people try to, it's almost dehumanizing to say, do your job, whatever. We're all human at the end of the day. We all have opinions. We all have stuff that's close to us. Politics constantly affecting us. Decisions constantly affecting us. So they're human too. They have opinions. They have rights. Like, you can speak up if you want.
Absolutely.
I do think that athletes should have a chance to project their voice on political topics. I agree with what she said. They are human. We're all human. Just because their job is to play sports and be broadcasted as an athlete does not mean that they are not affected by the everyday political challenges, especially as a minority. A lot of the minorities in the sports field face racism and prejudice every single day. So I do think that they should have a chance to let their voice be heard, because they are affected just like everybody else.
Absolutely. I agree with both of you guys. They should definitely be able to speak about politics. I mean, as Hailey was saying, it is dehumanizing, not even almost in my opinion, because you're telling another human, hey, you can't talk about this or subject. What happened to freedom of speech? What happened to basic human rights? But even push beyond that, you brought up minorities. And again, a lot of these, a lot of these associations are predominantly like featuring people of color, but you're going to tell them they can't talk about, what they believe in or things like that. I mean, we don't tell construction workers you can't talk about politics. You don't tell, whatever, you don't talk about politics. I get for some things like maybe teachers and other, occupations like that, they may have to hold back a little bit, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an entertainment service. So why can they not speak on what they believe in?
Absolutely. And sports teams, professional sports teams in particular, have always been used as more of like a soft politics sort of way to garner support from your constituents. Definitely starting with the Andrew Johnson era. He was the first president to invite a professional sports team to the White House. And that's something that is not new to us. We see that all the time, sports teams going and visiting the White House, speaking with the president, representing not really the common folk because they are professional athletes, but representing like something that is made to bring people together. Sports brings people together, and that is just one thing that they use to garner certain emotions out of people who are going to be voting for them or not voting for them. So when things like in 2017 when Steph Curry and LeBron James decided not to go to the White House, and it was a whole thing. Everyone,
Absolutely.
All of the news outlets that don't like us were like, oh, you can't do that. Laura Ingraham said, no one voted for you, shut up and dribble. That's insane. And that was really the mindset of a lot of people, was that athletes aren't here to speak. They're here to, what she said, shut up and dribble, just here to play the sport. And I understand from the side of when you're watching a game, you don't necessarily want to be thinking about the political aspect of it, but sometimes you have to think about the fact that you're not just watching a game, you're watching somebody do their job. And when they have a job to do, they have the right to be able to speak on things that are affecting them, especially if the thing is going to be affecting them in their job or in their well-being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand some people's argument, and not that I would agree, but just more so that, you know, it is an honor to go to the White House. It is an honor to be in the presence of, you know, different political figures. And I understand that completely. And given this nation's history, like, you know, for more often than not, it would be, you know, an honor or something that people would want to do. Like, hey, I want to go to the White House. But also, like Bailey was saying, if it's something that affects your job, or someone's in office who's affecting your job, position, or whatever political environment you're at, and you don't want to support that, what better way of showing that than to not go there? I don't think it's dishonoring, like, the White House or anybody that, like, by not saying yes. It's purely taking a stance on what you believe in, what you'd rather do, and would you rather spend your time. Because also, these people are, you know, very notable figures. It's a reason why when they do give their political opinions, people listen, that there's a big voice behind it, because they're very notable figures too. So to just label them as just pure entertainment value, it goes back to some days that we don't want to think about than just saying shut up and dribble. You're basically calling him something else. Yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So then back in February of 2012, I know we were barely cognizant back then. We were learning, like,
multiplication tables.
Multiplication, yeah. PEMDAS and all that stuff. But that was a really hard time for our community specifically, because that was around the time when Trayvon Martin,
yes,
you remember, was killed by a crazy person. I don't know, you're a crazy person. So the Miami Heat, while they were off at a game, they decided to take a picture, and the whole team was donning hoodies, and they posted it and they were spreading it, and basically just saying that this hit really close to home for them, because a lot of them were fathers, and it was the whole team in the picture was all black men, because the one guy that was white, he was injured. Not important, but it hit really close to home for them because they're black, and they were basically saying that you look at Trayvon, and that literally could have been anyone's child. Like, he was just a normal kid wearing a normal outfit, doing a normal activity. So absolutely, that was really something, and I think that that's ingrained in us, and it has been since it happened, that you can never forget that boy's face, or his life, or his story. So things like this, and who would you bring up that has done something like this?
Well, I'll say this one thing. I think for you to bring up Trayvon Martin is actually heartbreaking, because he was really one of the first ones to, in our generation, as an example of police brutality. So with him, I think of the case of Breonna Taylor, and how she was assaulted and unalived due to something that had nothing to do with her. And not only did it have nothing to do with her, it was unjust, because they were illegally coming into that home with weapons ready to fire, not knowing who was there. It could have been kids. It could have been anybody, not just, you know, an innocent black woman. And it's heartbreaking to our community, because it's like we have so much to say, but not a lot of power. And it seemed like our voices are repeatedly not heard and repeatedly ignored. And it really hurts, because we do want to come together as a community to make change, but it's hard when we're constantly being ignored.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I also thought about how, from an athlete's perspective, it's like you're trying to do your job, but at the same time you want to speak out for your community, and you want to stand up, and you want to be that figure. You know, you want to be somebody that's not just shutting up and dribbling. You want to be that figure that's stepping out and, you know, stepping up for your community, but at the same time, it's like, it's a lose-lose situation. You step up for your community, and maybe you're not doing enough, maybe they say you're not doing enough, or you be quiet, and people are telling you, oh, that's what you're supposed to do, that's your job. You know? So it's kind of just, I feel for athletes, because you're in a certain spotlight, and you have to definitely watch what you say, but it's, at the same time, a lot of us have that, especially minorities, have that, you know, fire in us to, I have to do this, I need to do this, but at the same time, I'm in this spotlight, what is going to happen to me?
Yeah,
you know, after, like, deals being lost, stuff like that. So.
Absolutely.
And that makes me think of, and even back to your question, like, who do we think of? I think of people like Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali, people breaking barriers in spaces that are, again, predominantly, you know, white, and they break in these spaces, and they do what needs to be done, but they push boundaries, create whole different avenues for us that we would never even think about, because, you know, we weren't alive back then. It was so far removed. But then to come now, we're like, you know, we even just play regular recreational sports or high school sports, but that wasn't going to happen before. And so, especially even thinking about making it to the league, and like I mentioned earlier, now the league is, predominantly black. So it's crazy milestones that we've reached. But then, as Hailey was saying, like people talking, like speaking up, regardless of their fear. I think of Kyrie Irving, where even with some topics I didn't agree with, he would take a lot of time off and, not play and boycott and do different things. Or he would sound like being forced to not play just because of a certain belief or political action he decided to take. And just even like thinking about all of that, we have Naomi Osaka, I believe is her name. And then just also, I believe she's the one who wore the mask with the names of a lot of victims on her mask. And that's brilliant. I think about even back in 2015, I don't think that anything special was going on, but the simple fact that the Cavaliers are warming up, the Cleveland Cavaliers are warming up with Black Lives Matter shirts and things like that, and just voices thinking about that. And that was LeBron too back then, but it was LeBron and Kyrie, and as well as many of the team, white and black people on the team. So many athletes come to mind, and I just think that we got to look back at just where we started to how we even get here to answer like a bigger question of should they be able to speak, because it's like, the fact that Jackie Robinson had to go through all these different, barriers and milestones and boundaries just to be able to play in a professional league with everybody else. And now we're even thinking about, sports shouldn't be political. Well, that's how they started. That's the craziest part. So. Absolutely.
And it's more insane to think that people, like you said, it's a lose-lose situation for these athletes, because people think that on the one hand, athletes are disconnected from the real world. They don't know how to interact with normal people because they're professional athletes and they're celebrities and all this stuff. But at the same time, when they do try to connect and they do try to speak on real life situations, I think about Dwayne Wade and his child.
Yeah.
His family is always in the spotlight, but he's disconnected from the real world. That doesn't make any sense to me, because the real world is always connected to his life.
Absolutely.
We are always in his business. So they don't have a balance, and we don't give them a balance for personal life and the ability to then go and do their job separately. And
Absolutely.
that's why it's so hard to disconnect the athlete from the activist, because I feel like you can go onto the field and you can play your sport, and then you can still be that celebrity who is just speaking about change, using your platform, and you don't. Nah, you should. I'm thinking, y'all. You don't have to take it too far, because I feel like everybody has an opinion. You could be like, you could really say, like, oh, I support this candidate, and that's fine, because you're an athlete, you're a person, you're an American, you're a citizen. You do what you need to do what you need to do. It goes to where you're like, I support this person because they do something like terrible. You're like, oh, I like this guy because he wants to start a war. That's where you should stop.
Exactly.
It's like, I like this guy, stop.
That's interesting.
Point blank. That's where you should stop. When we have to know, and this is just PR, this is just how everyone should speak in front of a camera ever, like whether you're famous or not. You should know where the barrier is, because
Absolutely.
Some things aren't even politics. Like, an athlete could be like, Black Lives Matter, and people would be like, you shouldn't say that. Like, whoa, that wasn't even a political statement.
Yeah.
That was just common sense, I fear.
Right.
Like, an athlete could be like, don't murder, and people would be like, you're getting a little political. Like,
it's weird. It's the stigma that comes with it when making that statement, and the certain, like, what people have a general idea of, like, who they think you are when you make that statement, or what you even mean. And that is a whole different conversation. But even going back to what you said about the limits that they take it, I mean, I think that even within those limits, the view is still skewed, because Nick Bosa was wearing political hats in his interviews and things like that, but he did not receive the level of backlash that any other person of color would receive if they wore a hat like that, or supporting a different candidate, or have received when publicly endorsing a candidate, the backlash they receive. So it's very skewed in how we view it, because if anything, you should tell him, shut up and run your football, things like that. Like, it's just, I think about that, and I think about the other thing you said about just people disconnecting the athlete from like the person and things like that, because at the end of the day, those two things aren't separated in the eyes of the law. I mean, like, people are making statements about police brutality in, you know, these athletic spaces, but we've seen athletes face police brutality. So at the end of the day, it's like they're not as separate. They should be able to speak up on these things because they are still who they are at the end of the day. When they leave that court, they are still a black man. When they leave that court, they're still a black woman. Like, whatever it is, etc. Like, makes me think Tyreek Hill recently, on his way to a football game, I think it was even the playoff game.
Yeah.
He experienced police brutality, and it's the things like that where no matter how fast of a car you drive, much money you make, wherever you play at, like, the connection of the fact that he's a black man, I'm a black man, still is there, and that he deserves a voice as well.
The world doesn't care who you are.
Absolutely.
Absolutely not. And I think we're gonna come back to this conversation. We're really revving up here, and we're gonna come back to it right after this commercial break. We're back. Thank you so much for sticking with us today. So the next thing that I want to bring up, as I know we spoke about LeBron James earlier, and I guess we just can't get enough of LeBron James, but back in 2020, as you all remember, following the brutal death and murder of George Floyd, LeBron James, along with a few of his colleagues, started a grassroots organization called More Than a Vote. And it was really about getting young voters energized and mobilizing voters, and especially voters of color, to get out there, share their voice, and things like that. And right now it has been taken over by the current president of the WNBA Players Association, whose name is escaping me at the moment. But they have shifted their focus more towards women's rights and things like that. So this whole organization is something that I think is really amazing that LeBron James has done, and I just think it's wonderful that they are coming together to mobilize voters like this. And so what is something that, or an organization that you have seen that is mobilizing voters at school, in the world, ever?
Funnily enough, I think of this actually. I think of Topicality, and when we first started, we met our first episode about actually going to the polls and like young voters, things like that. We were encouraging people, and it seemed like it was a pretty good turnout when I looked at the like on election day at PV, when people actually got to go up to the MSC and vote, and we're telling them where to vote. Yeah. I think of things like this, and I think that if more campuses had shows dedicated like this, or even just like local towns and things like that had like a conglomeration for like young voters and things like that, that could work. So I think of things like Topicality. I think of really, even you already mentioned LeBron James' More Than a Vote campaign, but people of his significance, when you start things like that, it energizes and like you said, mobilized a lot of young voters. I think of really, my first thought is that, because that's the main one that I was familiar with, and actually it got me really ramped up into politics in the 2020s. Right. Early 2020, forgive me. So that's mainly what my mind thinks of, but point is, Topicality is the GOAT. Topicality
is the GOAT. We are KPVU-TV's political edutainment talk show. Absolutely. Well, I personally am a member of, I would say, a few different grassroots political organizations. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy Texas Rising. Texas Rising is all over the country. PVAMU has its own chapter. There's, like we said, More Than a Vote. There's, what is it called? Go Campaign. I'm sure there's something called Go Campaign, not that. But the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, just things like this, they're really dedicated to getting not only other voters, people who are just, eligible to vote, but especially young voters, because there's a lot of us who are turning 18 or have turned 18, and I'm 20. I was 18 2 years ago, and I've voted several times, but there are people who are my age and older who have never gone out to vote, or who think that voting is a once every 4 year situation, but voting is year round. So when you really stay up to date with things like that, that's really important, especially so young, so that when you start so young, it's just second nature. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I do, going back to what Micah said, PV and Topicality in itself, during the past election, it was honestly, I was speechless during the whole week, going around campus, seeing kids voting, going down to the community center and voting, even going to the MSC to watch the polls, you know, having that watch party, seeing everybody come together and actually be engaged. And it was just really exciting to see, because you don't see that a lot of times. Young voters being engaged in voting, and you often see kids seeing it as a chore, but coming to PV, freshly turning 18, freshly voting, and seeing that was just amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to go piggyback off what she said. They actually had a parade for people to advocate to vote, and I thought that was really something different, because I never heard of that. I never seen anybody actually have a parade.
Our March to the Polls.
Yes, it was called a March to the Polls. Yes, I thought that was very unique, and I loved it, because even if they didn't know about it, people started joining in as they saw it going on, and that really showed a sense of community at the school and a sense of maturity, because they actually wanted to push a cause that was just bigger than PV.
Absolutely.
You know, I really love that.
Yeah, I enjoy things like that, because for me, voting is not a chore for me. I really enjoy being or participating in things like this, things that can really affect us locally, our nation, just being a part of such a great democracy. Because when you really think of the story of it, and listen, this is about to get so nerdy. I am a Broadway Hamilton girly, so I really think of it in just the theatrical way that it happened, but you really have to remember that we literally started as dirt, just a big pile of dirt, 13 colonies worth of dirt and potatoes. And they were like, you know what? Constitution.
Let's do something.
Let's do something about it. They were like, you know what? Federalist Papers. And I was just, I can't even imagine starting with absolutely nothing and creating an entire democracy.
Absolutely.
So the fact that we can reap the benefits and the not so benefits, because they didn't get it right the first time. Not everything was right.
Yeah.
I mean, they were working with nothing, guys. They were working with bullets that went that way. It was crazy. But the fact that we can participate, and this is something that has been going on for literally beyond our comprehensive ages, and that this is something that we can do and will continue to do, is so amazing to me. So like, I was at the March to the Polls, and that was wonderful, because like you said, people joined in, and we would say like, are you going to the polls? You're not going to the polls? Why aren't you going to the polls? It was
absolutely.
It's so fun to get out there, and especially at a school like Prairie View, where we really have a very strong history in voting and students voting. And that was also one of the interviews that you did that is just so important to us as students and as HBCU students, especially here in this county. So that just made me so emotional. Like, wow, guys.
Yeah. I think groups and events like this are so important, just because even the most minuscule groups, like my high school BSA, for someone who only cared about basketball at the time, like gateways like that got me into thinking about a world bigger than just me, or a problem bigger than just my own. And just like being with my people and things like that, feeling at home in a predominantly white school, we're sitting here at BSA meetings talking about the events of 2020, because that was us in high school. And so saying that, and when TikTok was going around, like everybody had a voice, everybody had an opinion on TikTok to say about those things like that. But through BSA and things like that, we got to actually say it in person, and then come together as a community and do something about it, or host events for voting, and like help other people in our school realize kind of what they're missing and what they need to know. Yeah. And I think about the March to the Polls, because I was in attendance as well. I believe you and me actually captured a lot of the footage for it. So seeing it, honestly, for a school like PV, I can't tell if it was FOMO or people really wanted to get on it, but I don't care because when they got here, like you said, you brought them to voting to their attention, and then now we have people coming to go vote that were never going to do it before. They were just sitting down in the square, in the view, wherever you are. You know what I'm saying? So having events like this, I just can think are so important, and having these groups, young groups around that just will mobilize young voters. Because that's the voice that needs to really get out there and really show up. And that's the voice I believe that is missing in a lot of elections for things to sway the way that they do, is young voters and awareness.
No.
Okay. Well, I think this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you guys so much for shedding light on all of these different ideas. You guys can let us know in the comments how you feel about the intersection of sports and politics, because I know that is an ongoing conversation that we are going to continue to have for many years to come. Once again, my name is Bailey Boyce.
And I'm Micah Beard.
And this has been Rolling Hills. Thank you so much for watching.
That's all for this week.
Make sure to follow KPVU-TV on all social media. Thanks for watching.